spiritual consequences of suicide, there are doors that should never be opened in haste, yet desperation often forces trembling hands to turn forbidden keys. Within the ancient scrolls buried in monasteries lost to time, there are references to a soul's exit not through the path of natural dissolution, but through the rupture of one's own sacred contract. Suicide, an act weighted with profound sorrow, is not merely an escape from pain, but a disruption of the energetic architecture that binds soul to body. The texts prohibidos speak not of punishment, but of disorientation, of a mist-like confusion that surrounds the spirit as it leaves its vessel prematurely. In the invisible realms, such an act reverberates like a sudden scream across the cosmic web, drawing the attention of forces beyond mortal comprehension. When a being departs by severing its own thread, the soul does not transition smoothly into the luminous corridors described in the traditions of the Bardo Thodol or the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Instead, it finds itself wandering the liminal borderlands between planes, adrift in a twilight realm. The Sabidoria ancestral of various cultures warn that suicide creates a rupture in the energy field of the soul, a tear that bleeds unresolved sorrow. The Japanese concept of yurei, spirits bound by emotional turmoil, mirrors this notion. These wandering entities are not condemned by divine judgment, but entangled in echoes of their own unprocessed agony, trapped in cycles of remembrance and regret, repeating the moment of their pain like a broken incantation. The Misterios Occultos of esoteric Christianity, Hermeticism, and Vedic teachings suggest that the soul, upon such an exit, retains its earthly impressions more vividly than in natural death. It may not even realize it has crossed over. The confusion is not symbolic, it is literal. Without proper energetic release, the soul hovers near the physical realm, drawn to familiar places, voices, and sorrows. In whispered tales from mediums and mystics, these souls often communicate through fractured symbols and emotional bursts, attempting to make sense of a reality that no longer obeys time or matter. Their suffering becomes ambient, an alchemia interior still in process, yet without a physical body to complete the transmutation. The energy that propels a soul beyond death is the same that sustains it in life: intention, clarity, and spiritual momentum. When suicide interrupts this current, the soul becomes energetically fragmented, like a melody played with missing notes. In Tibetan tantric traditions, this fragmentation is akin to losing one's orientation within the wheel of samsara, making the path to liberation more difficult, though not impossible. Illumina Sumi Spiritual is still attainable, but the journey begins from a place of deep shadow. The soul must first recover its own lost pieces, guided by the quiet echoes of compassion, ritual, and the invocations of the living who dare to remember and forgive. But what happens when these wandering souls are met not with fear, but with invocation? When the living choose to face the pain of the departed, not with silence, but with reverence and understanding, the answer lies in what the next layer of this hidden knowledge reveals: how the soul's energy field reacts to trauma and what truly happens in the aftermath of such a rupture. For this, we must descend deeper into the forbidden architecture of spirit itself, where energy, emotion, and eternity converge in unseen patterns. The energetic impact on the soul. To understand the true impact of suicide on the soul, one must first step beyond the veil of materialism and perceive the body as a sacred vessel, an instrument through which the energy cosmica flows and learns. When this vessel is abandoned prematurely, it's not merely death that occurs, it is an implosion of spiritual alignment. The soul, having forged a blueprint before incarnation, carries a vibrational map designed to evolve through experience. But when that journey is interrupted, a violent dissonance echoes across the soul's frequency, distorting its clarity and weakening its spiritual magnetism. Ancient Sufi mystics wrote of this rupture as a loss of harmonic resonance with the divine song of existence. Such trauma is not just emotional, it is energetic. In the moment of suicide, the soul's energetic field suffers what esoteric healers call a spiritual schism. The subtle layers of the auric body, which normally dissolve and reintegrate into higher planes through a sacred sequence, instead detach chaotically. This causes not only confusion in the afterlife, but also leaves traces, residual imprints on the material world. These imprints are sometimes perceived as hauntings, but more accurately, they are energetic echoes of a soul's interrupted path, replaying its unresolved anguish in spaces it once inhabited. In this context, the soul becomes both the sender and the signal, broadcasting pain into the energetic fabric of reality. The textos prohibidos of the Essenes and Gnostics whisper of veiled ones, souls who dwell in twilight because their departure severed their alignment with the cosmic current. These beings are not evil, they are incomplete. Their alchemia interior remains unfinished, the purification process halted mid-transformation. The energetic impact of this incomplete transmutation manifests as a fog, a distortion that makes it difficult for the soul to perceive guidance, love, or higher frequencies. In some cases, the soul clings to the familiar, to the remnants of the life it left behind, unaware that the body is gone and the clock of karma has shifted. Moreover, the disconnection between the physical and spiritual bodies does not dissolve easily. In traditions that speak of the silver cord, an etheric link between soul and body, suicide often results in a violent severing of this tether. This break is described in mystic texts as a shockwave that disorients the soul's passage, leaving it untethered and vulnerable. Without conscious passage rites or spiritual support, the soul may fragment, losing pieces of identity and memory. This fragmentation delays the journey toward illuminação spiritual, not as punishment, but as consequence, natural law responding to unnatural interruption. Yet within this cosmic fracture lies a hidden key. For the soul that suffers such energetic trauma, redemption is not denied. It is simply veiled. The energetic body can be restored, but it requires guidance, intention, and the sacred presence of those who remember the lost. But who are these guides? Who hears the silent screams of the fragmented soul drifting through unseen corridors? To explore that mystery, we must now uncover the roles of luminous entities who dwell just beyond perception, those who step in when all else seems lost. Post-death state and perception. Once the veil has been crossed through the rupture of self-inflicted departure, the soul does not awaken into light, but often into shadows. Not hellfire, no, but something far more enigmatic, a suspended dimension of disorientation. The ancient mystics called it the realm of wandering echoes, a liminal space where perception no longer follows earthly rules, and the soul is left chasing memories like drifting smoke. In this twilight existence, time does not march. It loops, fractures, and folds into itself. The soul, unaware of its death, may attempt to continue routines, whisper to loved ones, or retrace steps of suffering. It is here that the mysterios occultos of the afterlife become painfully tangible. According to Sabiduría Ancestral found in Tibetan, Mayan, and Hermetic traditions, the soul's perception after suicide becomes a mirror, distorted, infinite, yet self-contained. It often cannot see the light beyond because it is blinded by its final emotional imprint. In the Bardo teachings, such souls are caught in the Chonyid Bardo, where mental projections become temporary realities. Fear becomes form, guilt becomes terrain. The world perceived is not punishment, it is projection, created by the last dominant vibration at the time of death. And in the case of suicide, that vibration is often despair, confusion, and deep spiritual pain. Spirits in this state often seek warmth, familiarity. They cling to places, people, or objects once held dear. In countless esoteric reports, mediums and sensitives have encountered souls repeating the moment of their death, or watching their loved ones in agony, unable to intervene. These are not ghosts in the cinematic sense, but fractured beings trapped in resonance loops. Their senses are heightened yet fragmented. They can feel love being sent, but cannot always understand it. They see lights in dreams, but rarely recognize them as guides. Their alchemia interior is in stasis, neither evolving nor decaying, frozen in an echo. Some texts, prohibidos from ancient Mesopotamian cults, speak of silent mourners, spirits who do not wail but wander, unable to grasp that they no longer breathe. Their perception of reality becomes warped, and they may resist help, mistaking it for threat. This is why rituals of remembrance, ancestral offerings, and prayers of light have persisted across cultures, not as superstition, but as bridges. These bridges, woven with intention, create resonance fields that the soul can recognize. Only then can the soul begin to loosen its grip on the illusions that bind it. These acts, though small on the surface, ripple through dimensions. But what happens when such a soul finally pauses in the silence? When the echoes no longer feed their illusions, and a subtle presence is felt, neither human nor monstrous, but undeniably divine. This is the moment when spiritual guides may step in, when the soul stands on the edge of recognition. And it is toward these guides and their invisible interventions that we now turn, beings of light who wait patiently in the thresholds, ready to offer a path back into wholeness. Help from spiritual guides. Not all who wander are lost, but many do not know they are wandering. And yet, even in the darkest corridors of disincarnate confusion, there are presences that wait, not with judgment, but with infinite patience. These are the spiritual guides, beings spoken of in the Sabiduria ancestral of nearly every mystical tradition. Whether they are seen as devas, angels, bodhisattvas, or ancestors, their essence is luminous and still. They do not force awakening, they invite it, and for the soul ruptured by suicide, their role is not to rescue, but to realign the fragmented energies toward a remembrance of divine origin. Textos prohibidos from the Cathars and the Rosicrucians mention that these guides dwell in frequencies above sorrow, yet vibrate low enough to be felt by suffering spirits. Their presence is often perceived not as form, but as feeling, a sudden warmth, a remembered scent, a symbolic dream. For the lost soul drifting in post-mortem anguish, these subtle signs may be the first whisper of truth breaking through illusion. These guides do not speak in language, but in resonance. They enter not through force, but through spiritual permission, a moment of stillness in the soul's pain that allows light to enter. What mystics have called compassionate intervention is a process, not a moment. A guide may appear repeatedly in symbolic ways, gently revealing the reality of death without shocking the soul further. In some cases, the guide acts through the dreams of the living, planting messages of forgiveness, urging rituals or prayers, and that open energetic portals. These are not merely cultural habits, they are acts of alchemia interior, transmuting pain into presence and offering direction for souls adrift. The grieving living are not passive observers. They are part of the restoration, the bridge between dimensions. Through ancient ceremonies, laments, light offerings, ancestral chants, these guides weave threads of reconnection. It is through this cosmic embroidery that a soul may finally see beyond its illusion, recognizing that its suffering is no longer necessary. The Misterios Ocultos of soul recovery involve not just escorting the spirit into higher realms, but helping it retrieve the fragmented memories of its purpose, its original vibration, its light. The process is delicate. A guide must navigate the soul's remaining attachments, its fears, and its karmic distortions, offering compassion without creating dependency. But if these guides illuminate the way, why do some souls still resist the call? Why do others remain unreachable despite countless attempts? The answer lies not in punishment, but in the choices of consciousness. For even after death, the soul retains its free will, its right to evolve or to delay. And in that delicate dance between resistance and surrender, a final message begins to emerge, not for the dead, but for the living. A message etched in cosmic vibration, waiting to be heard before such ruptures are ever chosen. That message awaits us next. Messages for the living. Among the whispers that traverse the veils between worlds, there is a message that echoes with urgency, not from gods or scriptures, but from the souls themselves. Those who have crossed through the fractured gates of suicide do not cry out for pity, but for remembrance. Their voices carry lessons etched in pain, yet wrapped in sacred, warning that life, no matter how darkened by illusion, is a sacred vessel of transformation. The path of despair may seem inescapable from within, but beyond that veil, the soul sees the truth. It was never alone. The suffering that seemed endless was, in fact, a trial of alchemia interior, a burning meant to purify, not destroy. The Sabiduría Ancestral of countless traditions reminds us that emotional agony is not a defect of the soul. It is a signal, a sacred alarm that the spirit is calling for alignment, for expression, for transcendence. In the mystery schools of Egypt, pain was viewed as the cradle of awakening, a sign that the soul was nearing a threshold. But modernity has lost the sacred language of suffering, mistaking it for weakness rather than initiation. And in this silence, many choose to exit without understanding that the fire was the forge, not the end. The message from beyond is clear. Address your shadows while in the body, for the body is the temple where transmutation begins. There are teachings, hidden, often ridiculed, that speak of how to endure the dark night of the soul. The Vedic sages taught mantras not just for enlightenment, but for inner storms. The Gnostics preserved fragments of prayers designed for those gripped by existential crisis. Even within Christianity, the Desert Fathers whispered contemplations meant to anchor one's mind in the midst of spiritual dread. These are not just words, they are maps. The soul that contemplates suicide is not lost. It is seeking a gate. The tragedy is not the pain. It is choosing the wrong gate when other paths remain, cloaked in silence, waiting to be revealed. For the living, the message is both solemn and luminous. Do not ignore your inner storms. Speak of them. Offer them to the sacred. Surround yourself not with noise, but with presence. Seek the forgotten rituals, the grounding breath, the hands that listen without judgment. Those who suffer are not weak. They are vessels on the brink of transformation. And to those who know someone in that state, your presence may be the light that prevents a soul from severing its own sacred thread. The cosmic web is sensitive. Every act of compassion ripples through dimensions unseen. But perhaps the most powerful message comes not from the sages, but from the souls who once fell into the abyss and later found their way back through visions, dreams, or spiritual recollection. They say, "Had I known my pain was not a curse but a calling, I would have stayed." Let this knowing be the seed of healing. Let it open your perception to the Misterios Ocultos that surround emotion, pain, and purpose. For the journey does not end in death, but your choices now echo into eternity. And this message, it is only the beginning of what you are ready to remember. What if everything you've been told about death is incomplete? What if the most disturbing truths are not hidden in darkness, but in silence, sealed away in ancient texts, feared, not for their lies, but for their devastating clarity across civilizations? Scrolls forbidden by kings and burned by priests spoke in riddles about the fate of those who break the sacred contract of life. But now, the veil is thinner, and you were meant to find this message. Today, you'll embark on a journey through dimensions few dare to explore. We'll reveal what truly happens to a soul after suicide, not through dogma, but through the lens of Sabadoria, ancestral, energy, and perception. You'll learn how the soul becomes entangled in its own echoes, how its energetic field is shattered, and how it is sometimes rescued piece by piece by unseen guides. This is not fantasy. This is the metaphysical reality buried beneath centuries of fear, shame, and forgetting. If you feel a pull in your chest as you hear these words, it's because you were meant to remember. So before we begin, like this, a video to honor the truth, comment with your reflections, and subscribe to this channel, because once you know what lies beyond the final breath, your life will never be the same. Now that you've seen what lies behind the veil, can you ever look at death the same way? The truths revealed in this journey are not meant to haunt, but to awaken, to remind you that every breath you take is part of a sacred design, that your pain is not your end, it's your invitation, and that those who have left us prematurely still walk among us in frequencies only the heart can perceive. So I ask you, if the soul continues after death, what choices are you making now that echo into eternity? Share your reflections in the comments below. Your words may be the light someone else is waiting for. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because in the next revelation, we'll uncover the sacred rituals used by ancient civilizations to guide lost souls back to the light. This knowledge was never meant to disappear. It was meant to find you.